Hi everyone! Thanks for tuning into this mini podcast series about the influence of Catholicism on the perception of the European Black Death in the 1300s. Before we dive deep into our focus for today, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Anita, a senior public health student at the University of Michigan. I want to go into microbiology research, but has been really fun to explore the social influences on infectious disease outcomes throughout this project. For this episode, you'll only hear from me, but the next 3 episodes will be covered by my amazing group members, Maddie, Emma, and Catherine. Today, we will be covering a general overview of the plague, the Black Death, and the Catholic Jewish history to offer you guys some needed context before we dive deeper into the topic in the future episodes. To get started, let's talk about plague as a disease, as well as its causes, symptoms, treatments, and etc. Plague, or bubonic plague, is caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. It spreads mainly in the form of bites from infected fleas, but it can also spread through infectious body fluids or infected droplets in the air. Plague can spread quickly in the context of contact with dead bodies, which was happening during the Black Death in Europe. Plague can cause some rather serious symptoms like fever, chills, headaches, and the most defining symptom, swollen, painful lymph nodes called buboles. The buboles typically were filled with pus and when popped could be another mode of transmission for the plague. Nowadays, treatment for plague is pretty accessible and rather effective. There are a couple of antibiotics that are effective against plague, such as gentamicin, doxycycline, levofloxacin, and more. In the United States, plague cases are very rare with about 7 cases a year, average over the past couple of decades. While plague is not a big threat anymore, it was definitely taking many lives during the Black Death. The Black Death was one of the deadliest pandemics throughout human history, killing an estimate of 100 million people total, or around 40 million people in Europe alone. The Black Death was believed to start in Asia, and then it eventually traveled around Europe and some parts of Africa through infected rodents and fleas. Because society did not hold a structural scientific understanding of the plague like we have today, efforts to prevent and treat cases weren't organized and consistent across different groups of people. People understood the disease by the patterns and personal experiences they had, some even turning to religion to rationalize the plague. Despite efforts to avoid and ward off the plague, like migration and religious rituals like sacrificing, the Black Death continued to take many lives for many years. The Black Death had significant impacts on society in all facets. There was a massive labor shortage because of the increasing number of deaths, and this had devastating effects on the economy. The pandemic also disrupted the feudal social structure that Europe had during this time. The hierarchical structure was destabilized by the disease that could infect anyone. Lastly, the Black Death had religious impacts as well, which we will talk more about in later episodes. Some believe that the Black Death led to structural changes in Christianity, which Emma will touch on more in episode 3. The last thing we need to cover to have a good foundational basis for the future episodes is the history of Catholic and Jewish tension. While the Black Death was a catalyst for explicit violence from Catholics against Jewish populations, the Black Death was not the root cause of the tension between these two religious groups. Conflict between the Catholics and the Jews can be traced back to the start of the early church in 1st century AD. Catholic Christians diverged from Judaism because of their belief in Jesus Christ. Because these two major religions were at direct odds with each other, they were never able to fully sort out their differences, and that can explain their constant underlying tension. Each religious group thought the other was heretical, and whenever a situation that arose like the Black Death, they turned to antagonizing the other groups in various contexts. Alright, I think that about covers it for this episode. We covered the plague and everything you need to know about the disease, the specific Black Death pandemic and the effects, and the history of the Catholic-Jewish tension. Thank you for listening to this overview and intro podcast. We'll hope to have you tune in for the next episode about Jewish persecution during the Black Death.